Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another lesson in Alfred's Basic Adult Piano Course, Lesson Book Level 1. This video is Lesson 76, and we're going to cover page 87, the song Scarborough Fair. Alright, so like I mentioned in the previous lesson, Lesson 75, Scarborough Fair is a very nice arrangement in this book, one of my favorite pieces actually in level 1. And we worked on the key of D minor, that D minor scale, specifically the harmonic minor scale. But I had given you a spoiler alert that in Scarborough Fair, you're actually not playing a B flat or a C sharp. So if you look at the top of the page, it says key of D minor. And we know it's key of D minor because if you look at the very last note on the page, in the bass clef, that is a D. It also has one flat. F major has one flat, but because the piece ends on a D, it's D minor. Now, the piece also starts with D, F, and A, which is clearly a D minor chord. So there's that too. So there's a lot that makes this D minor. But in a rare event, you are not actually going to play any B flats in this piece. So if you skim through the piece, there's no Bs on the top line. On the second line, in the fourth measure, the Bs are naturaled. And if you scroll through the rest of the piece, there are no other Bs. Now, the other option is you could see some C sharps because they can borrow from the harmonic minor scale. The raised seventh is a C sharp. But if you look through all the Cs in this piece, none of them are sharped. So it's rare, but it happens that you can see a piece in the key of D minor, or more specifically, you can see a piece that has a flat in the key signature and you never even play a flat. That being said, this piece is indeed in D minor. Now there's a new dynamic sign there at the top of 87, pianissimo, and it's expressed with two Ps, and that means very soft. So at the beginning of the piece, we have one P, and we've seen that before, that's piano, so that's pretty soft. But at the very, very end of the piece is where we have pianissimo. Very soft. Now, it's all relative in my opinion, meaning if piano is as soft as you can play, then how are you going to do pianissimo? So you might have to raise everything up a little bit more. You got to make it relative. So your piano, yeah, it still has to be soft, but you've got to leave some room to do pianissimo. So if that makes sense. Now, there's something else you could do, which is a little cheat. Most pianos, especially acoustic pianos, the left pedal, now I don't have my pedal camera on yet, but the left pedal is your I think, soft pedal. Yeah, it's just called soft pedal. If you hold down the left pedal the entire time, it automatically makes the piano softer. Now, in some cases, I've seen pianos where it's broken or it just doesn't do a good job. In most cases, what I actually see is it doesn't just soften the sound, it sort of mutes the sound and it changes the color of the sound. So I don't always recommend it because it's just putting on a mute and it sort of just like kind of just kills the brightness of the sound. But every now and then it can be useful, and sometimes I have used it if I need to play even softer than soft. So that is an option. Now I'm not going to do that today. I prefer to not have that muted sound, and I prefer to just keep everything relative. So my piano, my soft at the very beginning, will be a little bit louder than my pianissimo at the very end. Overall, this entire piece is soft, though. The only other dynamic is mezzo piano. But we're going to save that for the end. We're going to save the pedaling for the end, and we're just going to get into the notes first. Now, I'm going to start with the melody, which is in the right hand. Now, the melody doesn't come in until the third measure. You'll notice in that third measure, there is a repeat sign at the beginning of the measure. So when you have a repeat sign and the dots are facing to the right, that means you're going to be coming back to that measure, back to that repeat sign at some point. Skip ahead to the bottom line, and if you look at the end of the fourth measure, there's our traditional repeat sign with the dots facing left. So once you hit measure 4, the end of measure 4 on the fourth line, you're going to repeat back to beat 1 of measure 3. And at that point, it says second time 8 VA in the treble clef. That means the second time you play this through, your right hand won't be playing up on this D. It'll actually be playing on this D, which is very nice. That's the easiest type of variety you can have on the piano. When you repeat something, repeat it in a different octave. It's very effective, and it's pretty easy because you're playing the same notes. The only difference is your right hand's over here now instead of down here. So the right hand, the first time through, does start on this D. And it does go up to 5 on A. So this is kind of your hand position that you're going to start off with. And you're going to stay in this hand position for, looks like 1, 2, 3, 4 measures. Okay? So we're in 3/4 time. I don't see any eighth notes. No, I see 1/8 note. The entire piece. And that's at the end of the first line. So I usually say, you know, when you got eighth notes, you got to count 1 and 2 and 3 and. But if it's 1/8 note in the entire piece, I'm really not interested in counting everything 1 and 2 and 3 and. At this point, you should have enough experience with eighth notes that we can squeeze that one in. Okay, so we'll deal with it when we get to rhythms a little bit later. But otherwise, we're pretty much going to count this piece 1, 2, 3. Just keep it easy on ourselves. And that way I can actually get through counting the whole piece without coughing or choking on my numbers and ands, because I can't seem to do that lately. Anyways, let's go ahead and get started on measure 3. So we got the thumb on D. So that's 2 counts, a half note. Then we got one more D on beat 3. The next measure, we go up to 5 on A. That's a half note, and then another A. Now here's our only dotted quarter note in the whole piece, 2 on E, followed by F, back to the E. So since that's the only time that rhythm occurs, I'm going to go ahead and count it for you. So just as a review, that's 1 and 2 and 3 and. So the dotted half notes, 1.5 beats, 1 and 2. The eighth note's on and then you're back to E on 3 and. Now, if we're not counting ands, it's just going to go 1, 2, 3. Or you could do this. You could go 1, 2, and 3, which is probably the best compromise, because then you still get that F on and. So 1, 2, and 3. The next line, we go back down to D with our thumb. Now look carefully, that D has a tie. There's a slur going underneath all the notes we just played, but there's also this tie. So this D is tied for 4 counts. 1, 2, 3, and then back to beat 1. So it's not beat 4, it's beat 1 because it's a new measure. As soon as we're done with that D on beat 1, that second finger hops up to A. And then we have a little skip, 4 on C. Then the next measure, 5 on D. For 2 counts, 4 on C, skip down to A. And here's our B natural. Skip down to G. And then the next measure, we have A. And that one is tied for 5 counts. So that's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and then up to 5 on D on beat 3. Now look carefully. This D going into the next line, the third line, that is not a tie. That is a slur, and you can see how the slur extends all the way through most of the third line. The other giveaway is the lyrics. So if I were to sing remember, I would sing a D for each syllable, re-mem. So I can't tie it because I can't tie re and mem if I were singing, right? So that's the other indication. Look at the lyrics if there's confusion. So we're on the third line. So we got a D again for 2 counts, and then on beat 3, and then the next measure, 4 on A for 2 counts, down to the 4 on C for 2 counts, and then 2 on A. Now here we have a little switch to 3 on A. And the reason for that is because we need to get down to G, thumb on F, and actually we're going to cross over to that 2 on E. But that little switch on the A helps us do that. So again, the beginning of that line, you're 5 on D, another D on beat 3, 4 on C. Now you could switch to the 3 on A here if you wanted to. Let's see what happens in the left hand. It's really up to you. I'm just going to stick with what they have. So 4 on C, 2 on A, and then switch to 3 on A, 2 on G, thumb on F, and then that crossover to 2 on E. Now that's a long tie. That E is 2 full measures, so 6 counts. In the last measure, you got thumb on D, up to 5 on A, and the last line, 4 on G, 3 on F, and then E, D, cross to 2 on C, and then keep that third finger, should be right there on D. And that D is tied for 6 counts as well. Now when we repeat, we're going up the octave. Third measure at the top line. Now you're on D right now, but it's with your third finger. You're gonna go up to the D above it with your thumb. So it's not going to be third finger on D to third finger on D. It's going to be third finger on D to thumb on D. So you're going to practice that jump. That's a little tricky. Now you're going to play the exact same thing up the octave. So you got thumb on D, D again, up to 5 on A, 2 on E. Here's that same rhythm. So don't get lazy with that rhythm. You don't want to make them quarter notes. Yeah, you want to do the dotted quarter followed by the eighth. 1 and 2 and 3 and. So we got our thumb on D. Remember that's 4 counts on the second line. Second measure, beat 2. Second finger jumps up to A. Skip to 4 on C and then D. Down to C. Skip down to A in the next measure. B natural. Thumb on G. 2 on A. Remember that's tied for 5 counts. Our last note is a 5 on D. Stay right there on the D again. On the third line. D on beat 3 and then C. Skip down to A. Next measure, switch to 3 on A. And then 2 on G, thumb on F, cross to that 2 on E for 6 full counts. Last measure, thumb on D. Up to 5 on A, 4 on G. On the last line, 3 on F, and then E, D, cross to 2 on C, and then end it with 3 on D. Now this time you don't repeat, you're just going to keep going. And the F and the D that's written there. Now that F and D is actually here, but there's an octave 8VA sign, octave higher sign above it, reminding us that we're not going to play it here, we're going to play it here. So that is a little bit of a jump. So you ended the fourth measure right here. 3 on D. But you're going to take your thumb and your fifth finger and you're going to jump up to F and this D. And that's where you end the song. And there's a fermata there, so kind of just fading away, slowing down, and holding out till it just fades away. So that is our melody, and most of the rhythms are just half notes and quarter notes, so it's pretty easy, pretty basic. And we went through the ties, how long to hold those ties. Your left hand is a metronome in this piece. Every single measure in the left hand is a quarter note. So we got 3 beats per measure, and your left hand is outlining every single one of those beats. That can be helpful when you put the hands together because, like I said, your left hand is playing on beats 1, 2, and 3, so you can keep track in your right hand. So I kind of like that because sometimes, we really have to work hands separate with the rhythms before putting them together. But here's a situation where the left hand is helping organize, keep track of the right hand, if you will. The exception, of course, is the last note of the piece in the left hand. Now your left hand starts down here. So this is the D below middle C. And you are outlining a D minor chord. So this is a D minor chord, D, F, and A. You're playing a broken chord for the first 4 measures. And like we said, they're just quarter notes, and it's going to be nice and soft, nice and even. So that's the first 2 measures, and then the third time, that's when your right hand comes in. So here's measure 4. Now measure 5, the entire chord goes down to C. That's a C chord. Same fingering. So you're here, all three fingers, all three notes go down one. But it's brief, because look at the second line. You go back to D. And you got three measures of this. Here's the second measure and the third measure. Now in the fourth measure, stay on this D on beat 1, but your second finger plays G, and your thumb comes over to B. This is a G chord. Now it's inverted because a G chord in what we call root position is G, B, and D. But this D is down here in the bass. So it's D, G, B. But that is a G chord. And it's only one measure as well. And when you go to the next measure, you're back to D minor. And you finish out the line in D minor. First measure on the third line is D minor. But when you go to the second measure, you're going to go down to C, but this is not C major. This is C, F, and A. It's actually an F chord. So an F root position is F, A, and C. But like that G major chord, this top note, we're putting it down here. So we've got C, F, and A. This just makes for smoother transition, better sound. And again, that chord is only one measure. Now the third measure is not even a chord. These are just passing notes. It's like going down the scale. F, E, D, all the way down to C in your next measure. You also notice that's the first measure and only measure there's no pedal. Why is that? Why is there no pedal in that measure? There's pedal in every other measure. In every measure, the left hand's always playing. The reason there's no pedal is because all of these are steps. All the other measures, they were skips. So when you have skips, it's a nice sound. When you have steps, it's a very muddy sound. So you want to play it smooth, but there's not going to be any pedal there. Now in the fourth measure, you're at the C chord. C, E, G. C, E, G, and then up to D minor for the last measure. But on the fourth line, you're back to C major. C, E, G. Second measure is the same, and the next two measures, D minor. And then you repeat, you're going to stay right there. So your left hand's not going up. It could. You could play it up there. Sure, why not? But they're asking... Well, they didn't ask. They weren't specific, were they? They just put it above the treble clef. Well, you know, a lot of times they say both hands, so they are specific when they want both hands. So I'm going to assume it's just the right hand. But that being said, you're welcome to play it in any octave you want. There's multiple octaves where it would sound nice. But for the purpose of this lesson, I'm just going to put the right hand up the octave, keep the left hand down here. So naturally, the left hand's going to play everything once again. And when you get to the bottom line, the last two measures don't go anywhere. The third and fourth measure on the bottom line was D, F, A. And then when you continue to the last two measures, it's D, F, A, and ending on D. So if there's one tricky thing about the left hand, it's keeping up with the changes. They don't always occur where you expect. So you might want to make note of that. One way or the other, whether that's, you know, circling, for example, the C at the end of the top line, last measure. Because up to that measure, everything was D minor, DFA, DFA, DFA. So that sneaks up on you. And when you get to the second line, you might think, okay, I'm still on C. But no, it goes right back to D minor. And then you get that G chord in the second line, fourth measure that sneaks up on there. So... mark your music, you know, when there's a lot of repetition, that's what gets hard. Knowing when it changes, it can sneak up on you. So, you know, circle it, highlight it, colored pencils, whatever. Just enough to get your attention, because I think it's easy. Those are easy notes. These are easy chords. It's just making note. Because obviously when you put the right hand with it, you're going to be a little more occupied. Speaking of, we're going to put the right hand with it. So when you start the piece, you're in the D, we'll call it the D minor position, right here. So both hands, D's, an octave apart. Now, have your right hand ready, but it's not going to play until until the third measure. So your your left hand begins nice and soft, and then the right hand comes in. Now it's a half note, and then you come in again on beat 3. And then the next measure, up to the A. Now here it's nice, you got A's on both hands on beat 3. Here's our trickiest measure. 2 different rhythms going on. Plus your left hand goes down to C. So you got 5 on C, 2 on E. So the way this works is 1 and 2 and 3 and. So that F, that 8th note F, actually comes halfway between beats 2 and 3, which is kind of nice in the left hand because it's halfway between the E and this G. So in a way, I mean, you could get by without counting it as long as you get your placement just right. So it's together, and then the left hand, and then the right hand, and then both hands. Nah, I'd still count it, just to be precise. So 1 and 2 and 3 and. If you need to break it up more, go for it. Start on beat 2. Just go 2 and 3 and. Or even just go and 3 and. And then work backwards. And then finally the whole measure. And of course, count it out to be precise. 1 and 2 and 3 and then probably go ahead and take those ands out. Maybe just add the and to the 8th note. So it would be like 1, 2, and 3. So that's the goal. Now going on, the second line, both hands play on D's. So your thumb is on D in the right hand, your 5th finger comes up to D in the left hand. So remember that D is tied for 4 counts. So you're going to go all the way to the next measure on this D. And then when you come up to F in the left hand, you're going to bring your 2nd finger up to A. So that's a little tricky. And then beat 3, A and C. Now the next measure are D's. So that's nice. Remember to hold the right hand, it's a half note. And then beat 3 is A and C. Now here's a tricky measure. This is a little random. You got D and A, G and B natural, and then B natural and G. So you might need to play that a few times just to get used to that. Going on, we're on D and A, and you're going to hold that A all the way through beat 2 of this last measure. On beat 3, you've got A and D. Stay right there in the right hand, go back to D in the left hand. So on the third line, you start out on D's with the 5th finger, both hands. Beat 2 in the left hand is F. And then when you go to A in the left hand, you're still on D in the right hand. Next measure, you got C's in both hands. You're going to bring your 5th finger in the left hand down to C, 4th finger in the right hand on C, 2 on F in the left hand, and then you got A's in both hands on beat 3. It's kind of nice. Now this next measure is a little tricky. You got to go down to 2 on F and switch to 3 on A, but once you're there, look at the pattern. It's the next note down, the next note down, and the next note down, but a crossover to that next note down, E in the right hand. So tricky, but if you look at it as just stepping down, I think that makes it a little bit easier. So right here on the 4th measure, we're going to hold this E for 6 counts, and we got C chord in the left hand twice. C, E, G, C, E, G. Now you're on D's in both hands. A's in both hands. The bottom line, jump down to C in the left hand, 4th finger on G in the right hand. Then you got G and F. Doesn't sound right, but it is. Next measure, this one's tricky. You got C and E. E and D. Doesn't sound right, but it is. you got G and a C crossover with the second finger. And then this is tricky. You got 3 on D, but you got to jump up to 5 on D. So D, F, A, and then hold the tie. And here we're going to repeat back. So bring that thumb up. And you should have D and D again, but now you're 2 octaves apart. Up to A. And then you got 2 A's on beat 3. So in the last measure, jump down to C in the left hand, 2 on E in the right hand. And then left hand, right hand, and then both hands. So again, that rhythm is 1, 2, and 3. And then going to the next line, D's in both hands. So bring 5 up to D in the left hand, thumb on D in the right hand. Remember that D's tied in the right hand. Next measure, we got D in the left hand. And then bring 2 up to A on beat 2. So we got F and 2 on A. And then we got A and C. Next measure, we got D's together. F in the left hand, and then A and C. And then we got D and A. 2 on G, 3 on B natural. Then we got B natural and G. Thumbs with both those notes. Next measure, we got D and A. The A is tied all the way until we get to beat 3, which is A and 5 on D. Stay on the D in the right hand. Go down to D in the left hand for the third line. We got A and D. Go down to C. So we got C and C. 2 on F. A and A. And then the third measure, 2 on F, bring that 3 to A in the right hand, and step down, next note in both hands, next note in both hands, and then next note, but cross over in the right hand. So you got 5 on C, 2 on E. And that's tied for 6 counts, so continue in your left hand. Last measure, D's. And we got A and A. Last line, down to C, 4th finger G. Next measure, we got E, C and E. We got E and D. And then G, and then the crossover to 2 on C. And then bring your left hand up to D, 3rd finger D. Finish out these 2 measures, and then get ready to jump up in the right hand to F and D. Your left hand doesn't move. It stays right where it is. And we'll finish it out. So you may have realized that putting the hands together rhythmically isn't terrible, but coordinating everything else is pretty challenging. There's a lot of fingering in this piece. We got, a couple crossovers and things. The fingering in the left hand is not an issue. It's the right hand. Now, naturally, you want to work on that right hand and get it down as much as possible, but in all honesty, like I've always said, once you get the right hand down as perfect as you can, putting it hands together, it's almost like starting over again. But certainly you want to get it comfortable in one hand first. So that covers almost everything. We've still got pedal and we still got dynamics. So let's go ahead and turn on the pedal camera. All right, so we're going to look at the beginning of the piece again. And if you notice, right at the very beginning, we got pedal. But there are no notes before that pedal, so this is a situation where you could already have your foot down on the pedal before you play that first D. So if that gives you a little head start, one less thing to worry about, go for it. So I like to usually have that pedal down ahead of time. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to go ahead and have my hands in place. I do this, but I forget that a lot of times really the left hand dictates pedal. So I'm actually not going to do hands together just yet. I'm going to go through this with you with the left hand and the pedal because, as always, almost always, the pedal changes with the chord changes. So the pedal actually is going to kind of be a marker for you. Now, there are a couple of exceptions, and I'll stop and talk about those when we get to them. But you remember I said earlier, I said the hard thing about the left hand by itself is just knowing where those changes are. But the pedal marks those changes. So let's check it out. Your pedal's down, you're getting ready to play D minor, and you got D minor for the first 4 measures. But when you get to measure 5, the last measure, we got our first pedal marking. Now remember the way pedal works. Move to the C, and as soon as you hit the C, then your foot comes up and right back down. Okay? Going down to the second line, you got pedal because you go into a different chord, D minor. So wait to hit the D, and then foot is up and down. Now it stays there. Now, oddly enough, measure 3, you do pedal. The reason for this is the right hand. Look at the last note in the second measure. It's a C. And the first note of the third measure, it's a D. It's not a very desirable sound if I don't pedal there. So the pedal is actually because of the right hand. Okay? But let's go back to the left hand. So we're on the third measure, second line. Now I've got a D in the fourth measure, but remember the chord is a G chord. So I'm going to pedal here. And then we're going back to D minor, so I'm going to pedal again. I'm going to hold it for these last 2 measures. Now, they pedaled going from the second line to the third line. Both measures have a D minor chord. Earlier when that happened, I said, well, look at the right hand. Now look at the right hand this time. It's just D's. So why did they pedal there? You got me. The only thing I could think of... So it starts a new sentence, right? Remember me to one who lives there. And that's also a musical sentence. Now, the re is the beginning of the sentence, but it's musically a pickup, right? So it's on beat 3. Now, beat 1 on the word mem of remember is where, you know, the music kind of starts. Does that make sense? So that's I'm stretching it for explanation here, but that's my only explanation. They just want like a clean start right on beat 1 of our new musical sentence. That's all I got. So I'm going to stick with that. Otherwise, you wouldn't have to really pedal there. So, but we'll honor it. We'll go ahead and do it. So we're going to start on the third line. I'm going to go back to my left hand here, third line. Now, the next measure has an F chord, so I want to pedal here on the C. And then here we have the one measure with no pedal. So as soon as you hit the F, come off the pedal and stay off. And then come back down on the C in the next 2 measures. Last measure, D minor. Bottom line, C major. And again, they've pedaled the C major once again, but look at the right hand. You went from, all these notes are steps, so it gets real muddy. So there it makes sense, the right hand. Measure 3, you're back to D minor. Now when you do the repeat, you can just stay down on the pedal. That actually works out very well. One less thing to think about, right? Having the pedal when you're jumping back to the top of the page and your right hand's going up the octave. The pedaling will be exactly the same when you do the repeat. And when you get to the end of the piece, the last 4 measures, you can just hold that pedal down all the way through. So when you put the right hand with it, it's not going to change the pedal. So what I mean is you can learn the pedaling with just your left hand and then add the right hand back in and you'll be just fine. It's not going to change anything if you've learned it that way. If you ignore the markings and you only change pedal where the chord changes, then when you add the right hand, there are those couple spots that I'd mentioned where it will be muddy. So it's best to still just follow the markings they indicated, because ultimately that's what works best. So the last thing is dynamics, and we talked about the pianissimo at the very end of the piece. So you want to save your softest playing for the very end, but you're going to start pretty soft in the beginning. So let's do the hands together here very slowly. So, and the other thing is, if you really want to be good with this, we've talked about this many times, keep that left hand softer than the right hand. So where it says mezzo piano on the third measure, you might want to do something like left hand mezzo piano, right hand mezzo forte. Let the melody sing, bring it out. Your other option is maybe just keep the left hand piano and make the right hand mezzo piano. But my point is, if you really want to be a mature musician, keep the melody louder than the left hand. In this case, the left hand, because melody's right hand. Let's start at the beginning. So both hands, got my pedal down, going to play soft, and I'm going to let this melody sing out a little bit. Right here, so you notice how I got louder. There's a crescendo there, and it works perfectly because the notes are going up. Pretty typical. When notes ascend, you want to get louder. So now you could say, whoops, now you could say we're at a mezzo forte. But here, we're going to start getting softer and softer. Now, it's interesting because at the end of the second line, and I didn't see this earlier, mezzo forte. Now, does that mean we're coming down to a mezzo forte, or does that mean we're going back up to a mezzo forte? Well, that's the beauty of music. I think you could do it however you feel. So what I did, what I said earlier on the second line, second measure, I said we're up to a mezzo forte, right? And then we come back down. What if we came down and then back up? That's one way to look at it. So that mezzo forte is suddenly mezzo forte. Now, if they really intended that, they would have put something called SUB period. SUB is short for subito. Subito is suddenly. Suddenly mezzo forte. So I'm soft, and then suddenly I'm louder. Now the other option is go up to a forte. But I don't know if I really like that, because going back to the second line, here's what it would sound like if I went up to a forte. So I just don't like it, because forte to me at this point just takes a really nice pretty piece and it's just sort of banging it now. So I recommend personally the option of going up no louder than a mezzo forte in the middle of the second line, and then your diminuendo comes down to mezzo piano, and then you're suddenly back to mezzo forte. I think that's very effective, a nice little surprise for the audience. So the last two measures of the second line, I'm coming down. So the left hand is what gets it softer and softer. And then suddenly loud again. Mezzo forte loud though, not forte. And this is getting softer, which the left hand dictates. Every one of these gets softer. And then here we're soft. That note didn't sound. I was thinking about how we're soft piano, and then notice it gets even softer in the third and fourth line of the third and fourth measure of the third line. Well, if you're going straight through to the end, that makes sense actually, because you have to get softer to get to pianissimo. But we're repeating, so I think it's the same thing. You could do a suddenly mezzo piano when you repeat. I think that's going to be effective too. So starting at the bottom line, we're piano. I'm I messed up my fingering. Here we go. Fourth finger's on that G. So we're going to get softer and softer and a little bit louder. Yeah, it's very effective. Get softer here, but loud, or at least louder, and then softer. So this is all dying away, and then soft. Now here we're going to save something. Hopefully I can get it to work. Oh, I didn't get it to work. So I'm playing on a relatively new piano, new for me. It's actually a very old piano. It's a nice baby grand piano. But unfortunately, it doesn't react well to playing soft. So you see what happened when I went pianissimo? Even right there, my D in the left hand just didn't sound. Still didn't sound. So this piano is particularly difficult, so I'd really have to practice that. Or I could cheat. I can use that soft pedal. So now I got the pianissimo I wanted. Unfortunately, I don't know if you can hear it as clearly on video, but it muted the sound. It took some of that color away. The crispness to the sound has now been tampered with. So that's unfortunate, but I don't know. That actually also might work well in the fading away effect. So there's a lot of ways to look at this. Hence the beauty of music, the ability to interpret and express. So, does it have to be perfect? No, nothing ever does. But relative, you know, when you're working with dynamics, relative. My pianissimo might be softer than your pianissimo. Perfectly fine. But obviously this piece sounds nice on the whole when it's played with a delicate touch and has that softer sound. And that's why I don't like going above mezzo forte at any point. That pretty much covers the piece. So a very, very fine arrangement. Again, one of my favorites in the level 1 book. Like a lot of pieces at this point, teaching you something new. It's supposed to be teaching you playing in the key of D minor. I find it funny because you didn't play one flat. You didn't play one C sharp. Nevertheless, this is a great piece for coordinating hands together and working out fingering and crossing overs. So certainly some scale-like passages in that sense, because scales have, you know, crossing over and under. So there is that at play. But again, ultimately, it's a nice piece of music, and I enjoy it a lot, and I hope you do too. So good luck with it, and it was fun as always, and I do look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.